Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be able to be with you all tonight, even though I wish it weren't necessary for us all to gather tonight, yet again to speak out against this injustice. And it was illuminating to hear both Kristinn and Jen talk about the injustice, talk about the situation faced by Julian Assange, talk about the situation faced by WikiLeaks, and to hear from Jen that even legal privilege, the confidentiality of the exchange and advice given between a lawyer and their client has not functioned in this matter. I think it's very important for us all to remind each other and other people we talk to outside this meeting about this situation, about exactly what WikiLeaks has done, exactly what WikiLeaks has achieved, exactly what WikiLeaks has revealed. Go back to April 2010. Between April 2010 and April 2011, in a 12-month period, WikiLeaks published the following material. First of all, the collateral murder video, which so many people will have seen, where innocent people in Iraq were gunned down, and that video went around the world and showed people the truth of what was going on in our name. The Afghanistan war logs in July 2010. Similarly, the Iraq war logs in October 2010, which showed the real number of civilians who'd been killed in Iraq, and revealed as well instances where civilians had been, and how many civilians had been shot by United States troops for being too close to checkpoints, including people who were pregnant women, including people who were mentally ill. In November 2010, they revealed 250,000 diplomatic cables, and then in April 2011, the Guantanamo Bay files. It almost seems, so well known has it become, about the inhumanity visited upon inmates and prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. It almost feels as if we've always known this. But if it weren't for WikiLeaks, many people wouldn't have known this. The truth of what was going on there wouldn't have been evidenced, wouldn't have been public knowledge. So it's important that we speak up for the work that WikiLeaks has done, speak up for that journalistic contribution that has been made. Because if journalism is really going to hold power to account, if journalism is really going to speak truth to power, then they need to expose what the powerful do in all of our names. And WikiLeaks has undoubtedly done that. And it's often said that truth is all too often the first casualty of war. Let's be clear about it. Julian Assange should not face extradition to the United States of America because of his journalistic work exposing the horrors of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It may be uncomfortable for those who wage illegal wars that the truth is known, but exposing the atrocities of war, as WikiLeaks has done, represents the very finest traditions of investigative journalism. Just imagine how poorer our understanding of the barbarity of the Vietnam War would have been had those who exposed the US atrocities in Vietnam then been subjected to prosecution for doing so. Are we really going to hand over someone to spend 175 years in prison, the rest of their life in prison, for exposing killings and exposing abuses in Iraq and Afghanistan, including the killing of journalists? It's wrong that the Conservative government signed the extradition warrant to the United States. It not only appears It not only appears to be yet another example of kowtowing to US foreign policy, but it seems to me to be a complete failure to respect the basic principles of journalistic freedom, as we've heard tonight. And this issue, I have to say, goes way beyond the case of WikiLeaks. It's a clear attack on all those who wish to expose abuses of state power, an attack on the journalists who report on them. It's deeply worrying implications for media freedoms, for freedom of speech, and for civil liberties in our country. And of course, as we've heard, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has called for this extradition to the United States to be stopped. So everyone, regardless of their political persuasion, regardless of their political opinion, everyone who believes in free and open press must, in my view, join that demand for this extradition to be stopped. People will have seen today, quite rightly, in what seems like and what is a much more minor point, has been justified criticism for the arrangements the Conservative government has with press in the press lobby in Parliament. I do hope that all the journalists who have spoken out against that also speak out against the extradition of a journalist, Julian Assange, for this. So I'll conclude by saying that as somebody who believes in anti-war internationalism, in someone who believes that if we are going to be a truly democratic world, then what the powerful do in our name must be known by us. I'm proud to be with you, but I wish I didn't have to be. I wish we didn't have to have meetings like this. But without the work of WikiLeaks, without the work that they've done, we wouldn't know, and the world wouldn't know, so many of these injustices and humanities carried out in our name. So it's important to remember that. It's important to congratulate WikiLeaks for what they've done. The best kind of journalism is the most difficult kind of journalism. But who would have predicted, some did, but who would have predicted that in our country, which boasts of its attachment to freedom of the press, that in our country, a journalist for exposing these things would be at risk of extradition to spend the rest of his life behind bars. It's an injustice against him. It's an injustice against WikiLeaks. It's an injustice against all of those people killed in Iraq, imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay, or killed in Afghanistan. And as Martin Luther King said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. It's our job as human beings who care about other people to speak out against these injustices. And it's our job as human beings that care about other people to speak up for journalists who, for speaking out against these injustices and revealing these injustices, face extradition and face life behind bars.